A single sentence can unlock a life you thought was sealed shut. At 9:07 p.m. The night over Harbor City felt humid and electric, as if the storm parked over the bay were waiting for a cue. Inside the harbor diner, the fluorescent lights hummed their tired hymn. The air tasted like old coffee and fryer oil. A neon crab blinked red-blue-red in the window, stuttering like a faulty heartbeat. Maya Brooks, 24. Smelled like bleach from the afternoon scrub-down and peppermint lip balm she could no longer afford. Her mother's name, Ruth, pulsed at the edge of her thoughts the way a bruise throbs when you don't touch it. Room 412, second infusion. Overdue bill. Do not open the envelope. She balanced a tray with chipped mugs as the bell over the door jangled and the diner went quiet in the animal way. A room recognizes a predator. The man who entered wore money like gravity. Alexander Cole. If tabloids told the truth once a month, the way broken clocks hit the hour. Cole Capital. Glass towers. The skyline's favorite son. He moved like a knife, moves through an envelope clean. Inevitable. Leaving the paper changed. Maya set the water down. Manu. Black coffee. He said. Not looking. His voice low and unhurried. Mahogany and winter. He reached for the glass. That was when his cuff slid back, and the thing on his finger turned the air sharp, a ring of pale gold, face engraved with a phoenix mid-rise. Wings flared and hammered to look like layered feathers. In the bird's eye a pinned sapphire so blue, it felt like a threat. The band was carved with minute barbs, like each feather could cut if you traced it wrong. Maya had seen that ring before, in a velvet box beside Ruth's hospital bed, the one thing her mother would not pawn. It's a promise. Ruth would whisper, voice papery. Fingers hovering over the lid. Not to be sold. Not to be forgotten. Maya hadn't planned to speak, but some sentences are born already sharpened. Looking for a place to land. Sir, she said, and her breath fogged the inside of her own chest. My mother has a ring just like yours. Silence, the kind that smells like ozone. Then, very slowly, Alexander Cole set his hand flat on the table, the phoenix watching her like a single bright eye. Impossible, he said, outside. Thunder rolled. Somewhere. A nurse in room 412 checked a monitor and scribbled a number. Inside. A waitress stood between a billionaire and a story that had been edited for 100 years. The doorbell jangled again as a delivery kid rushed past. Dripping rain. Nobody looked. Maya's hands shook. Just a little, but her voice didn't. It's not impossible, she said. He looked up fully now. And whatever he'd been before, profile in a magazine, headline in a feed, collapsed into a person whose certainty could crush, then prove it. Alexander Cole said. He left 3 crisp bills she couldn't afford to touch. The neon crab blinked. The storm drew breath, somewhere between the ding of the kitchen bell and the hiss of the coffee pot. A lock turned. Harbor Diner collected loners. It had the kind of lighting that made everyone look a little haunted, which felt honest. On wall speakers, an old Sam Cooke song tried to sound cheerful and gave up halfway through the chorus. The Waitress station was a metal altar to small salvations, sugar packets, paper straws, and the good napkins you only gave to people who said please. Maya leaned her hip against the steel and watched the Billionaire coast to the corner booth like a ship sliding into a private harbor. Rain cobwebbed the window behind him. Outside, Harbor City's docks blinked their code. Red, green, white. Like someone else's heartbeat. Congratulations, Nina Torres said under her breath. Gliding up beside Maya, with a stack of plates and a smirk. You just manifested hurricane tax bracket. Maya blinked. Who? Nina popped her gum. Then thought better of it and shoved it back into the wrapper like contraband. Alexander Cole, as in Cole Capital, as in owns half the waterfront and the other half owes him rent. Don't stare. He can smell eye contact. Maya poured coffee into a thick white mug and discovered her hand was steadier when it held something useful. It's just a guy who wants caffeine. Ooh, Nina said. And I'm just a hobby astronaut. Want me to take that over your resting mortal face is showing. I got it. Maya said. Because you can be poor and still have pride. Or maybe because her body wanted forward motion, so her brain wouldn't replay the box on her mother's side table. The velvet was worn smooth at the corners from decades of being taken out, put back. Taken out again like a ritual you perform when you need to believe you still exist. She took the mug to the booth. The rain tapped Morse code on the window. Alexander Cole watched the storm. The way some people watch fires. Coffee. Maya said. He nodded without looking. Thank you. It should have ended there. He would drink. Tip like he was laundering guilt. And leave. The world would return to its regular cruelty. But the cuff moved. The ring flashed. And a memory lit like a fuse. The velvet. The bird. The tiny blue eye. Sir. Maya heard herself say. Soft. Like testing ice. My mother has a ring just like yours. He stopped. In movies. A person freezes, and the score tells you it matters. Here. The music didn't change. The fryer kept hissing. But the air did something. It went thin. He turned his palm up, considering the ring. Then set his hand on the table as if establishing a border. Impossible, he said. And gave her the full weight of his eyes. They were not the kind of blue that made you think of water. They were the kind that made you think of winter. Why, Maya asked before she could talk herself out of it. Because this ring, he said, has belonged to one family for a century. It is unique. Maya pictured Ruth's hands. The network of soft blue veins. The careful way she pressed the lid of the box closed like saying amen. It's not unique, she said, feeling the word crack in her mouth. Not if my mother has the same one. He watched her. And something shifted. Not in his face, but in the way his attention sharpened as if he'd been idling. And now he was behind the wheel. Your name. Maya. Maya what? She felt the old instinct to keep the last name. The apartment number. The phone bill. Everything. Off the record. Then she thought of hospital forms. Of how small people disappear when they don't write their names down. Brooks. A muscle in his jaw moved. Ms. Brooks. Either your mother is mistaken, or she is a thief. He said it the way a man reads a number. Accurate and cold. There is no other explanation. Nina. Halfway to the table with a tray balanced like a crown. Shot Maya a warning look. Don't. Please. Maya didn't back up. Sometimes your feet decide your future before your head votes. My mother, she said carefully, returns extra change. He considered her for a beat that felt like a verdict hearing. Then he slid 300 under the coffee saucer and stood. When he moved, space made room. He was already past her when he said, without turning, then prove it. The bell chirped. The door breathed. Rain filled the gap he left. Nina arrived and exhaled a swear that steamed the air. Gir. I didn't. Maya began. Then stopped because she had. She had poked something with a stick and expected it to be a rumor. Nina eyed the cash. We could buy the diner a second fryer. Or a new roof. Or my dignity back. Don't touch it. Maya said. Which was funny. Because almost nothing in her life was untouchable anymore. Are you okay? Nina asked. Softer now. Yes. Maya did. The kitchen bell dinged. Table 3's meatloaf was up. Maya moved. Bodies in motion. Gravity. Choice. Whatever. But the ring had hooked something under her ribs and tugged. The hospital smelled like lemon cleaner and warmed plastic. In room 412, the television murmured to itself so the room wouldn't feel empty. Ruth Brooks slept with her mouth slightly open. The way she had since the second round of medication rearranged her nights. A nurse had tucked the blanket to military corners. The window watched over the parking lot lights like a grid of small moons. Maya sat. She didn't turn on the lamp. She didn't need to. She knew the room by heart, the soft thud of the oxygen concentrator. The hospital-grade lotion on the shelf. The little square of blue velvet on the table. She opened the box. The ring lay in its nest like something dangerous, pretending to be patient. The phoenix's sapphire eye was the color of a bruise the day before. It decides who it's going to be. Don't sell it, Ruth had said once. voice threadbare but adamant. Promise me. I did. Maya had answered. Because poor people knew the weight of promises better than anyone. You keep them, or you break yourself. Now she raised the ring toward the corridor light, and the bird seemed to move, not literally, but the feather etching caught shadows in a way that suggested motion, wings half a second away from a decision. Behind her. Sheets whispered. Maya. Ruth's voice was sanded down to essentials. Maya set the box down gently. Like putting a child back in its crib. I'm here. Ruth's eyes opened and warmed. They always did. No matter how the day had treated her. Late shift. Yeah. Maya took her mother's hand. It was warm. And the skin felt fragile. The way old books feel fragile. You learn to turn the pages slower. It was fine. Fine. Ruth repeated, smiling like the word had been good to her once. Lightning blinked far off. A second later the window hummed with the sound. There was a guy. Maya said before she decided whether she would. At the diner. Ruth's eyes sharpened. She had grown up working 3 jobs and taught Maya young that tone mattered more than nouns. A nice guy or a trouble guy. The kind of guy who walks like streets are leased to him. Maya said, sometimes the only way to tell the truth is to hand it a metaphor. He had a ring. Ruth's gaze dipped to the velvet box without moving her head. Like a chess player making a small, internal move. A phoenix. Maya said, blue eyes. Ruth's hand tightened. Not much. Enough. The monitor ticked a little brighter. What did he say? That it was unique. Maya said, that if you have one, you're wrong or you stole it. Ruth's breath came in quiet syllables. She turned her face toward the window as if checking that the night still belonged to both of them. When she spoke, her voice had the iron that had gotten them through winters when the landlord pretended heat was optional. My father gave it to me, she said. He said it was proof. Proof of what? Ruth's eyes brimmed with 100 careful edits. The story had corners that cut, that a promise was broken by men who believed they owned everything they touched. Who were they? Ruth closed her eyes. The machine did not. Some doors, she whispered, are best left closed. Maya let the silence sit. She had learned not to rush the words that cost. She rubbed her thumb over her mother's knuckles. Outside. A siren passed, ribboning the room in red for a breath. Then letting it go. I can't pay for the next infusion, Maya said finally. The truth slid out and hit the tile with a sound only she heard. But I will. I'll figure it out. Ruth opened her eyes again and put all the love she had on her daughter's face. You always do. It was the most dangerous blessing, the faith that becomes an order. Maya stayed until her mother's breaths lengthened into the slow rhythm of sleep. She checked the time. 7:26 a.m. and stood, the chair legs scuffing a soft apology. Before she left, she looked at the ring again. You can keep a promise and still start a fight, she thought, and wasn't sure if that was courage or stupidity. In the hall, a janitor steered a yellow bucket like a ship. He hummed something bluesy. The night nurse waved and mouthed, how's she doing? And Maya mouthed, good, because sometimes love is lying to people who care. On the drive home, the storm finally decided what kind it was, and rain came down in sheets that made the city blink. At a red light, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her landlord. Rent, in all caps like shouting might produce money. The ring flashed in her rear view like a memory or a dare. At home, the apartment smelled like laundry coins and hope. Maya kicked off her shoes and stared at the stack of envelopes on the table, each one a little whiter than the rest, like they were competing for attention. She put the velvet box in the cupboard behind the rice because poverty had taught her that treasure lives where nobody thinks to look. She lay down on the couch and didn't turn on the lights and told herself she would sleep. Instead, she saw a hand with a phoenix, a blue eye, and the way Alexander Cole had said, prove it, as if proof were a thing you could summon like a car. Her phone buzzed again. Nina, you alive? Maya type. Define alive. A typing bubble. Then you poked a god tonight. Proud concerned. Also, PSLs tell me you didn't touch the money. Maya smiled in the dark. Didn't touch it. Good. Gods like to seed stories with traps. What are we? Greek chorus. Speak for yourself. I'm the raccoon who steals snacks at intermission. Maya laughed once. A sound that startled her. Then she stared at the ceiling until the cracks made constellations. She named one exit strategy and one don't call him again and one room 412. By the time sleep finally came, it felt like something had shifted in the city. In the weather. In the room. Or maybe just in her. At Dove. Harbor City woke up humid and gray. The ferry horns made low, mournful sounds that felt like the ocean clearing its throat. Alexander Cole stood in front of a wall of glass 100 floors above the water and watched the storm rearrange his reflection. He took the ring off and set it on the black stone of his desk. The desk didn't care. He pressed his thumb to a biometric pad, and a hidden drawer slid open with the quiet approval of expensive mechanisms. Inside lay a leather folio embossed with a crest. The marketing division had banished from public use 2 CEOs ago because it looked futile. He opened it to the page, with the engraving Phoenix signet. 1900 commissioned by a Cole. Artisanal boutique. Paris. Family heirloom. There were photographs. A receipt. A short note in slanted French. And the kind of pride only very old money believes is a virtue. He knew what the papers said. He had read them as a boy like other children. Read fairy tales. Impossible. He told himself again. Hearing the waitress's voice anyway, he closed the folio, then reached for his phone. Geneva High. Counsel. Fixer. The only person in his orbit allowed to say no to him. Picked up on the second ring. Already at my desk. She said, "What's on fire?" "Find me everything on a woman named Ruth Brooks," he said. And the words tasted like a line he might wish he hadn't crossed. Start with Harbor City General. And her daughter, Maya. I want to know if they're running a hustle. Geneva finished. Bored sounding. Which was her version of affection. Understood. He hesitated. The storm pressed its forehead to the glass. No, he said. If I'm wrong. Geneva was silent, a beat. On it. He set the phone down and reached for the ring. The sapphire winked like it knew the end of the story, and was bad at keeping secrets, far below. A waitress with sleep in her hair and resolve in her chest, took a bus to a hospital and carried a promise in her pocket. Between them, a city shifted its weight, waiting to see who would move first. Morning came the way it always did in Harbor City. Gray. First. Then gold. Then indifferent. Maya woke to the sound of her upstairs, neighbor's television leaking through the thin ceiling and the drip of the faucet that never stopped no matter how tightly she turned it. The couch had left a bruise on her shoulder blade. Her phone blinked with the kind of notifications you don't want to read. Unpaid balance alerts. A voicemail from the hospital billing office. One from her boss reminding her that the lunch rush started early on Thursdays. She sat up slowly. The city outside her window looked washed clean but tired. Every rooftop was still wet. Every puddle, holding a dull reflection of clouds that refused to leave. She reached for her jeans on the chair, shook the coins out of the pocket, and counted enough for bus fare. Before she left, she opened the cupboard. The ring in its velvet box glimmered faintly in the half-light. She hesitated, then slipped the box into her jacket pocket, not because she planned to show it to anyone, but because she couldn't not. The bus rattled down Bayside Avenue, past warehouses and new condos pretending not to notice each other. Maya watched raindrops race across the window. For the first time, she noticed how each one caught the morning light, how they broke and reformed. Everything in the city, she thought, was built on the same trick. Reflection and forgetting. At the diner, Nina was already behind the counter, hair pinned up, eyeliner sharp enough to file paperwork. "Morning, detective," she said. "You gonna interrogate any more billionaires today? Or should I warn the health inspector instead?" Funny. Maya Muda? Tying her apron. "Anything happened while I was gone?" "Yeah. The espresso machine finally died." "Like, died. You can add it to our list of things that gave up before 30. Maya smiled despite herself, but the noise in her chest hadn't gone anywhere. She poured herself a cup of weak coffee and tried to focus on the next order slip. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She didn't pick up. A minute later, a text appeared. Ems. Brooks. This is Geneva Hay. Illegal counsel for Cole Capital, Mr. Cole requests a brief conversation at your convenience. Neutral location. He'd like to clarify something regarding last night's encounter. Her first instinct was to delete it. Her second was to laugh. Clarify. As if that word could cover what she'd seen in his face when he said, impossible. She locked the phone and shoved it deep in her apron pocket. Across town. Alexander Cole sat in a room that looked like money had invented gravity. The skyline spread beneath his windows like a lit circuit board. Geneva stood across from him. Tablet in hand. Expression unreadable. She's clean. Geneva said. No priors. Works double shifts. Mother's been in treatment at Harbor General for chronic myelofibrosis. Bills stacking up. Single apartment. Behind on rent. But no evidence of any scam or blackmail angle. Family. None alive except the mother. Father died in an accident when she was a kid. Grandparents unknown. Her mother's maiden name, Ruth Miller. Father Thomas Brooks. That's it. Cole turned the ring on his finger slowly, watching the sapphire catch the office light, and nothing connecting her to my family. Grandparents unknown. But if you want, I can dig deeper. At old employment records. Lineage searches. He hesitated. Logic told him to drop it, to write it off as coincidence and go back to mergers and boardrooms. But logic didn't explain why the ring felt heavier on his hand this morning, or why the waitress's face had followed him into every reflection since. Die, he said. Geneva nodded, quietly, as the grave. When she left, Cole stood by the window. From up here, the city looked like a map of decisions, bridges, roads, grids of consequence. Somewhere down there, a waitress carried a ring that shouldn't exist. Back at the diner, the lunch crowd arrived. Dock workers, clerks, one cop who tipped in quarters and left advice instead of kindness. Maya moved through the rhythm, automatically pour. Smile. Refill. Smile again. She almost forgot the text until the bell over the door chimed, and her pulse recognized the sound before her eyes did. Alexander Cole stood in the doorway again. No suit this time. Dark sweater. Rain-creased collar. But he brought the same stillness with him. The same unspoken demand that rooms rearrange themselves. Nina, he said. Oh no. Tell me that's not. It is. Maya said, setting down the coffee pot like a weapon she didn't plan to use. He approached the counter. Ems. Brooks. He said quietly. We should talk. I'm working. I can wait. Then you'll be waiting a long time. He looked around the room. Customers. Frikuk. Nina watching from the corner, and lowered his voice. Please. Something in that please wasn't polished. It wasn't command, it was a crack. Maya untied her apron and nodded toward the back door. 5 minutes. Outside. The alley smelled like rain and engine oil. The dumpsters dripped. She folded her arms. The jacket pocket heavy with velvet. Say what you came to say. Cole exhaled once, fogging the cold air. I had someone look into you, into your mother. Of course you did. I needed to know if there was a reason she would have that ring. And he looked at her then. Really looked. As if the night before hadn't been enough. There isn't one, which means the reason is mine. Maya frowned. That sounds like something people say right before they make a problem my fault. He almost smiled. Almost. You said your mother's name was Ruth. Yes. Her father. Do you know his name? Maya shook her head slowly. She never talked about him. Said he was an engineer back east. That he died young. Why? Cole's jaw tightened. Because the man who designed the turbine that made my family rich was an engineer back east. He died young. 2. His name was Samuel Miller. The air between them seemed to tilt. Maya's heart stumbled once, then steadied. You think they're the same person? I think. Cole said. Someone in my family made sure the records never connected them. And if I'm right, then your mother's ring and mine are proof. Maya finished for him. He nodded. They stood in the drizzle for a long moment. Two strangers tied to a ghost, neither of them understood. Finally Maya said, "You wanted me to prove it. Maybe now it's your turn." Cole's eyes flicked toward the gray sky. Then back to her. "Then we'll start with the archives." "Whose archives?" "Mina." He slipped a business card from his wallet, placed it on the railing, and left before she could decide whether to take it. The card's surface gleamed in the wet light. Cole Capital, Executive Tower, 80th floor. Behind her, the diner door opened and Nina's voice floated out, half worried, half triumphant. "You gonna tell me we're in a spy movie? Or should I start selling tickets?" Maya looked down at the card, then at her reflection in the puddle below. Flickering, uncertain, doubled. The phoenix ring pressed against her palm through the fabric of her pocket. Something, somewhere, was starting to burn. The rest of Maya's shift unspooled like film in slow motion. Her hands moved, her mind didn't. She poured coffee that wasn't ordered, refilled a sugar jar twice, smiled at strangers who blurred together. The only thing in focus was the weight of a business card now tucked behind her name tag, pressing faintly against her chest like a dare. "4 0 p.m." The sky had turned a sullen gray blue. The rain hadn't decided whether to stay or leave, so it hovered, miste, undecided, like the city was exhaling regret. When Maya clocked out, Nina was leaning against the counter, arms folded, one eyebrow raised to the altitude of judgment. "So," Nina began, "rich guy shows up, drops cryptic family drama, leaves you looking like you swallowed a lightning bolt. Spill." Maya wiped her hands on her apron. "Buying time. He thinks my grandfather might have been someone his family stole from." Nina blinked. "Like, stole from as in plagiarism or stole from as in buried in the backyard?" Maya sighed. "I don't know yet, but he gave me this." She showed the card, the gold embossed letters catching the dying light. Nina whistled low. 80 floors up, girl. That's not an address. That's a test. I'm not going." Maya said, "He's, whatever this is, it's his world." "Not Mina." Nina smirked. "Yeah. Then why are you still holding the card like it's radioactive?" Maya tucked it into her jacket. "Because it probably is." That night, the city couldn't sleep, and neither could she. She sat at the tiny kitchen table, the ring box open beside her, laptop glowing weakly under the dim bulb. The screen was a patchwork of search results. Samuel Miller, Cole Capital patent history, 1920s, turbine design, family crest phoenix. Too many pages. Too many dead ends. The oldest reference she found was a yellowed newspaper clipping, archived in a digital library. Industrial breakthrough, promised by Cole Foundry's new turbine gear system, designed by visionary engineer A. Cole. The innovation is expected to redefine modern power output. There was no mention of Samuel Miller. Not once. Maya leaned back, rubbing her eyes until colors danced behind them. Maybe she was chasing ghosts. Maybe Ruth had made a mistake. 2 rings that looked alike. Nothing more. But then she opened the box again. The gold didn't look old. It looked tired. Like it had been waiting too long to be believed. Her phone buzzed. Another message from an unknown number. "If you want to see where your story intersects with mine, come tomorrow, 7 a.m. Bring the ring." No signature. But she didn't need one. The next morning, Maya dressed like she was going to war with her own nerves. Plain jeans, black shirt, jacket zipped high enough to feel like armor. The city was bright for once. But in that harsh way winter mornings sometimes are, where every reflection looks sharper than it should. The Cole Tower rose from the financial district like a monument to ego glass. Steel. Ambition. The revolving doors hissed as she entered, the air conditioning swallowing the street's noise. A receptionist greeted her with a smile that never reached her eyes. "Ms. Brooks, Mr. Cole is expecting you." Executive level. The elevator was a silent bullet. As it climbed, her stomach stayed behind somewhere around the 50th floor. When the doors opened, she stepped into a world built for people who never looked down wide glass. Chrome edges, The skyline spread like a private gallery. Alexander Cole stood by the window. Jacket off. Sleeves rolled. The morning light cut across him, catching the gold ring at his hand like a deliberate spotlight. Maya, he said. Her name a careful experiment in familiarity. Thank you for coming. I almost didn't. I know. He gestured to a long, minimalist table. A single folder lay open, pages arranged with military precision. But you should see this. She approached, hands in her pockets. Inside the folder were scanned documents, contracts, patent application, faded letters typed on cream paper. Cole tapped one. This is the first design schematic for the coal turbine. Dated 1968. The engineer of record Alan Cole. But this. He slid another page forward. He is a withdrawn patent from the same year, authored by a Samuel Miller. The design is nearly identical. Maya's throat went dry. So he was my grandfather. Possibly, Cole said. Or the man your grandfather worked for. Either way, he was erased, bought out or threatened into silence. My grandfather built his empire on someone else's work. He said it without the usual arrogance, more like a confession he didn't want to own. Maya looked up at him. And what? Now you feel guilty. Truthfully, his jaw flexed. No. I feel obligated. My company's legacy. My family's name. It's all built on a theft. And if you and your mother hold the other ring, then you hold the missing proof. She stared at him. You're telling me this because someone else already knows. Maya frowned. Knows what? He turned away from the window. That you came here. That the second ring exists, and they won't want this story surfacing. He walked to a console and pressed a button. A security feed flickered onto the glass wall. A reflection of the lobby downstairs. A man in a dark coat stood at the reception desk, flashing an ID. That's my cousin, Cole said. Derek Cole. He runs the family foundation. The one that launders our public image. If he's here, it's not to welcome you. Maya's pulse quickened. What are you saying? Cole's eyes found hers. I'm saying you shouldn't have come alone. Security glass muffled the sound of the elevator arriving. Footsteps echoed across the polished floor. Cole closed the folder and slid it toward her. Take this. Don't speak to him. Go out the back elevator. It exits to Bay Street. Maya hesitated. You're serious? Deadly. The footsteps grew louder. A male voice. Smooth. Theatrical Alex. You hiding guests again? Cole's hand brushed the intercom switch, muting the hallway sound. His tone dropped to a whisper. Whatever happens, keep that folder close. It's not about money anymore. It's about control of the story. Maya backed away. The folder pressed against her chest. Why help me? He looked past her, at the window where the sun flashed off the harbor water. Because I'm tired of being the villain in a lie. Then the door swung open. A man in his late 30s stepped in. Same eyes as Alexander, but colder. Amused. Well, he said. Isn't this interesting? Maya froze. Derek's gaze fell to the folder, then the ring on her hand, then her face. That, he said softly, shouldn't exist. Cole moved between them. Leave her out of this. Derek smiled thinly. You really don't understand what's at stake. Do you? Cousin. Maya's body decided for her. She turned and ran. The sound of her own heartbeat drowned everything else. The alarm shout. The echo of shoes on marble. The ding of the service elevator as it opened just in time, inside the small metal box. She pressed the button for ground with shaking fingers. As the doors closed, she caught one last glimpse of Alexander Cole, standing still while Derek spoke to him. Expression unreadable. When the elevator dropped, the floor seemed to fall faster than the air. On the street, Maya stepped into sunlight that felt too bright. She clutched the folder like a life preserver, turned down a side alley, and only then allowed herself to breathe. Inside the folder, beneath the documents, was something she hadn't noticed before. A photograph. Black and white. Two men in suits beside a turbine prototype. One of them was clearly Alan Cole. The other, Young, kind-eyed, with ink on his fingers, looked eerily like a version of Ruth's face she'd never seen in a mirror, written in fading ink at the bottom. Fa-is-im, the real architect. The city noise blurred. Maya touched the photo. The edge cutting lightly into her thumb. The sting brought her back to herself. She had proof. She also had a problem. If Derek Cole wanted to bury this, she was already on his list. She folded the photo into her pocket, squared her shoulders, and looked toward the hospital skyline in the distance. Her mother needed the truth, and for the first time, Maya realized truth had a cost, and she might already be paying it. The folder felt heavier with every block Maya walked. Maybe it was paper. Maybe it was consequence. By the time she reached the bus stop, her hands were trembling too hard to hold her phone. The screen showed 6 missed calls. 3 from a blocked number. 1 from the hospital. 2 from Nina. Her stomach tightened. She called the hospital first. "This is Harbor General," the nurse said. Voice clipped and tired. "Ms. Brooks, your mother's stable now. But we had a scare. Her heart rate dropped during the night. She's asking for you." Maya's throat closed for a second. "I'm on my way." She clutched the folder tighter. Somewhere behind her, car tires hissed over wet asphalt. The city sounded like static. Ruth Brooks looked smaller under the hospital lights, skin pale against the sheets. Machines blinked beside her, their rhythm unsteady but still beating. When Maya entered, Ruth smiled, the kind of smile people use to pretend they're not hurting. "Hey, baby," she whispered. "You look like you wrestled a thunderstorm." "Maybe I did." Maya pulled a chair close. "How are you feeling?" "Like my bones forgot how to float." Ruth's eyes traveled to the folder in Maya's hands. "What's that?" Maya hesitated. "Answers. Maybe more questions." She opened the folder carefully, spreading the documents across the tray table. Patents, blueprints, and the photograph. The phoenix ring glinted from the velvet box beside them. Ruth stared at the image of the 2 men, the young engineer with ink-stained fingers and Alan Cole beside him. For a moment, the hum of machines seemed to fade. "That's him," Ruth whispered, touching the corner of the photo. "My father, Samuel Miller." Maya felt her pulse surge. "Mom, he worked for them. For the Coles." Ruth's expression hardened. "He didn't work for them. He built something they couldn't. They took it. He told me once that when a man with money steals your idea, he calls it business." Her voice cracked on the word. Maya swallowed. "They buried him. Mum. His name. His work. Everything. And now someone in that family knows I have proof." Ruth looked up sharply. "You went there?" Maya nodded. "I had to. You don't know what they're capable of," Ruth said, her voice suddenly sharp. "They made sure your grandfather disappeared quietly. Don't let them do the same to you." Maya took her mother's hand. "I won't. But if we keep hiding, it's like they win twice." Ruth's fingers tightened around hers. "Fragile but fierce. Promise me you'll be careful." "I promise." It was the kind of promise that didn't feel possible to keep. That night, Maya didn't go home. She sat in the hospital cafeteria long after closing. The hum of vending machines filling the silence. The folder lay open in front of her, pages scattered like a crime scene waiting to be solved. She didn't notice the man until he sat across from her. He wore a tailored coat, dark hair slicked back, and a smile too polite to trust. She recognized him from the tower. "Derek Cole, you must be Maya," he said pleasantly, like greeting an old friend. "I hope you don't mind me joining you." Her pulse jumped. "How did you find you?" He smiled wider. "Harbor City's not that big. And Alexander has never been good at keeping secrets. What do you want?" Derek leaned forward, folding his hands. "To make you an offer. You have something that doesn't belong to you. Hunt it over, and you walk away. No lawyers. No headlines." Maya's jaw tightened. "It does belong to me. To my family." He tilted his head, studying her. "Idealism. Cootie. But I'm not here to argue history. I'm here to prevent collateral damage. Alexander is playing a dangerous game with ghosts he doesn't understand. Ghosts like my grandfather." Derek's smile didn't falter, but his eyes did. Your grandfather was paid. Generously. What he did afterward, that was his choice. Maya laughed once. Bitter and small. You mean dying in debt? That choice. He sighed. The performance of patience. Look, I don't care what you believe, but if that folder leaks, it doesn't just hurt my family. It hurts thousands of employees, investors, charities. Are you ready to be responsible for that? The guilt in his tone was surgical. Precisi. Maya met hiskaze. You sound rehearsed. He smirked. You sound naive. She gathered the papers calmly, sliding them back into the folder. If I were naive, I'd hand this to you. But I've learned something powerful men always say it's bigger than you, when what they mean is stay small. Derek's smile vanished. Be careful. Ms. Brooks. He stood, buttoning his coat. Harbor City can be unkind to people who don't know when to quit. When he left, the fluorescent light above her flickered once, then steadied. Maya sat for a long moment, breathing through the adrenaline, before whispering to no one, "Neither can I." Bedavn. Her decision was made. She couldn't trust Alexander completely, and she couldn't run. She needed proof that couldn't be erased. She spent the morning photocopying every document in a 2-4-hour print shop, sealing the copies in a padded envelope. On the front, she wrote one name she thought might still have a conscience, the Harbor City Tribune. Before dropping it in the mail slot, she snapped a photo of each page and saved them to a password-locked drive. When she stepped back into the gray morning light, the world felt thin and electric again. Like that first night in the diner, the ring on her finger caught a beam of sunrise and flared briefly, the sapphire eye bright as flame. For the first time, Maya understood. The bird wasn't rising. It was watching. The morning air carried the metallic tang of rain-soaked steel. The kind Harbor City never really washed off. Maya walked fast. Hood pulled low. The envelope already gone. He dropped into the Tribune's after-hours slot like a secret too heavy to keep. But as she reached the corner, the street felt wrong. Too quiet. Too watched. Across the road, a black sedan idled with the patience of something paid to wait. Its tinted window reflected her in warped symmetry, one version of her walking away, the other standing still. She turned the next corner, pulse quickening. Inside the car, Derek Cole watched through the rain-slick glass. Should I follow her? His driver asked. No, Derek said, eyes narrowing. She's already where we want her. Desperate enough to make a mistake. He looked at the folder copy she'd left behind in Alexander's office earlier that week. Still incomplete. He didn't need all of it. Just enough to predict her next move. Keep eyes on her mother. Derek murmured. That's her weakness. She won't run far. He leaned back, watching the city smear across the window. A halo of blue lights and moral inconvenience. At the diner, Nina was wiping down the counter when Maya slipped inside. Soaked to the bone. Face pale. Hey, Nina said, startled. You look like you just escaped a documentary on bad decisions. What happened? Maya hesitated, glancing toward the window. I think I'm being followed. By who? The caffeine police. I'm serious. Nina. Her voice cracked. It's them. Cole's people. His cousin showed up at the hospital last night. He knew where I was. Nina's humor evaporated. Jesus. Maya, you need to go to the cops. And say what? That a billionaire's family might have stolen my dead grandfather's idea 50 years ago, and now they want to shut me up. Nina's silence said she understood too well. Maya sank onto a stool, burying her face in her hands. I sent the documents to the Tribune this morning. If they print it, the truth's out. But if they don't, you're alone. Nina finished quietly. Maya nodded. Nina slid a cup of coffee across the counter. Then you're not completely alone. Maya managed a small, grateful smile. By afternoon, the rain returned. Thicker now. As if the city was trying to drown its gossip, Maya headed to the hospital. Her shoes squelching with every step, the halls were busier than usual. Nurses rushed by. Phones rang. and for a second she couldn't tell if the panic in her chest belonged to her or the place itself. When she reached room 412, the door was half open, the bed was empty. Her stomach dropped. She grabbed the nearest nurse. "Where's Ruth Brooks?" "She was here this morning." The nurse frowned at the clipboard. "Transferred. Room 608. Cardiology requested monitoring. She's stable." Maya's knees nearly gave. Stable. She clung to that word. She hurried up the stairs, her heart sinking with every footfall. When she entered 608, her mother was there. Ale. Thinner, but breathing. "Maya," Ruth whispered. Voice raw. "Where were you?" "Handling things." Maya squeezed her hand. "You're okay. That's all that matters." Ruth's gaze darted toward the window. "No. It's not. A man came by earlier. Said he was from the insurance company. Asked questions about you." Maya froze. "What kind of questions?" "Where you work. Whether you've been in touch with anyone from Coal Capital." Ruth's voice trembled. "He left when the nurse came in." "But, Maya, he wasn't insurance. I know what fear looks like. He had it. The kind people wear when they're paid to lie." Maya's chest tightened. "They're watching us." Ruth squeezed her hand. "Then you have to make them see. You're not afraid." Maya shook her head. "They don't scare that easily." Her mother smiled faintly. "Then make them angry. Angry people make mistakes." That night, Alexander Cole stared at the city from his penthouse. Whiskey untouched. His phone buzzed. "Geneva Hay again." "You were right," she said without preamble. "Your cousin's moving pieces you didn't authorize. He sent people to watch the girl and her mother." Cole's jaw hardened. "Call them off. You don't control him anymore." Geneva said, "You control the story. And right now, he's writing it faster than you." Cole rubbed his temple. "What's the Tribune's position?" "They've received something anonymously this morning. We're monitoring. If it's her, the press will break the scandal wide open." He went still. "And if Derek gets to them first, then she'll disappear into the same shadow her grandfather did." The line went dead, leaving him with the kind of silence that sounds like consequence. He looked at the phoenix ring on his hand. The same symbol that had once meant legacy, now pulsing like a curse. He made a decision. The hospital corridors slept in fluorescent twilight when Maya heard footsteps behind her again. She turned the corner, clutching her phone like a weapon. A shadow detached from the wall. "Don't scream," a voice said. She recognized it immediately. Alexander Cole stepped forward, Rain still clinging to his shoulders, eyes burning with the urgency of a man running out of time. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. "You shouldn't be anywhere near. They're coming for you." "Maya." "I know," she snapped. "Your cousin already tried to." "This isn't about the cousin anymore." He cut in. "It's bigger. He's not covering up history. He's selling it. He's trying to liquidate Coal Capital's archives before the truth leaks. That includes your grandfather's original schematics." Her pulse thudded. "You're saying he's destroying proof?" Cole nodded. "In the next 48 hours, she looked past him down the sterile hallway, feeling the gravity of every word. "Then we don't have time." "No," he said. "We don't, but we can still stop him. If we move before he realizes we're on the same side." Maya hesitated. Trusting him felt like walking on glass. But Ruth's words echoed. "Make them angry." She squared her shoulders. "Then, let's make him furious." Cole met her eyes. Something fierce flickering there. Respect. Or maybe relief. "We start tonight. You still have the second ring." Maya reached into her pocket, the velvet box cool against her skin. "Always." "Good," he said, glancing toward the storm-dark window. "Then we have something he can't buy." Outside, lightning split the skyline in half. The city went white for a heartbeat, then fell back into shadow. Maya turned to Cole. "Where do we go first?" He looked toward the glass, his reflection a double of guilt and resolve. "To the archives," he said. "Where the fire started." The night swallowed Harbor City whole. Rain slicked the streets, turning every puddle into a mirror that didn't want to tell the truth. Maya and Alexander moved quickly, coats pulled tight against the wind. The car waiting at the curb wasn't his usual sleek town car. It was a gray sedan with no markings. Too modest for him. Too anonymous for her comfort. Cole slid behind the wheel. "Seatbelt," he said. Maya buckled without argument. Though her pulse was already keeping count of every second. "Where are we going?" "The company's historical vault," Cole said. Cole Capital keeps its legacy records there. Contracts. Prototypes. Blueprints. Even artifacts from the early founders. Derek's using the upcoming audit as cover to digitize and destroy. If he erases your grandfather's signature, the story dies before it's born. Maya's hand brushed the velvet box in her pocket. "Then we make sure it doesn't." Cole glanced at her. Something almost like admiration in his look. "You realize this isn't exactly legal." She gave a thin smile. "Neither was what your family did to mine." He didn't argue. They drove through the industrial district where the city ran out of glass and steel and turned back into brick and rust. The warehouse sat at the end of a narrow pier, surrounded by the smell of salt and machinery. No lights except one flickering bulb over a steel door. Cole parked beside a stack of shipping crates. "The vault's underground," he said. "We'll have 10 minutes before security notices the motion sensors trip." 10 minutes. Maya repeated. "To rewrite history." Cole gave her a look that could have been grim humor or confession, or to burn it down. He pressed a card key against the scanner. The lock blinked green, and the heavy door slid open with a mechanical sigh. Inside, the air was cold and dry, smelling faintly of old paper and ozone. Rows of metal shelves stretched into the dark, filled with archival boxes stamped with the company crest. "The Phoenix," Maya whispered. "How many lives did your family bury down here?" "More than I want to count." They moved through the aisles, footsteps muffled by the concrete floor. Cole carried a small flashlight, its beam slicing through the dust. "The turbine file should be under engineering 1,961,970, he murmured. They found the section easily, but when he reached for the first box, he froze. It was empty. Maya looked over his shoulder. Row after row of boxes, all labeled, all hollow. "Someone's been here," she said. Cole nodded once. "He's moving faster than I thought." A noise echoed from deeper in the vault. A metal klang. Distant but deliberate. Cole turned off the flashlight. "We're not alone." Maya's breath hitched. "Security. Worse," he said softly. "Family." They followed the sound, careful not to make any of their own. At the far end of the corridor, a faint light flickered through a half-open door. Cole pushed it gently and peered inside. The room was smaller, lined with filing cabinets and an old drafting table. A single monitor glowed on the desk, its screen showing a progress bar. Secure, file deletion 78%. Standing in front of it was Derek Cole. He didn't look surprised. "You always did have a sense of timing, Alex," he said without turning, "though I expected you alone." Maya stepped out from behind Cole before he could stop her. "You shouldn't have touched my grandfather's work." Derek turned, smiling with the ease of a man who thinks the world is a game he's already won. "Ah, the waitress. You really are persistent. I'm his granddaughter. Then you have my condolences," Derek said lightly. "But your grandfather sold his design fair and square. That's business. It's not my fault your family mistook shame for injustice." Maya's voice shook, but her stare didn't. "You call it business because it kept your hands clean." Derek's smirk faltered for half a second. "You sound like him," he said. "Your precious engineer, always whining about ethics while other people built empires." Cole stepped forward. "Derek, stop this. We can fix it. Admit what happened. Give credit where it's due." "You still don't get it." Derek Jutin, his calm cracking into contempt. "There's nothing to admit. This company runs on myth, not morality. You tear that down. You kill everything our name stands for," Maya said quietly. "Maybe it deserves to die. For a heartbeat." The air froze. Then Derek lunged for the keyboard. Cole moved faster. The two collided. the chair skidding across the floor, the monitor toppling with a shattering crack. Sparks burst. Plunging the room into half-dark, Maya darted forward, grabbing the nearest folder from the table before the monitor hit the ground. The top page bore a name she'd never seen before: Daniel O. Cole. Restricted account. "Stop," she shouted. "What is this?" Both men turned. Derek's face had gone pale. "Where did you get that?" he snapped. Cole's gaze flicked between them. "Daniel O. Cole. Our great-uncle." Derek's jaw tightened. "It doesn't matter. He's dead." "Then why hide him?" Maya demanded. Derek didn't answer. He reached for her wrist. She yanked away, the folder tearing in her hands, half the papers scattered to the floor, one sheet sliding across the room under the broken light. Cole grabbed it first. His eyes scanned the page. An old birth certificate, dated 1905. The name Daniel Owen Cole. He looked up slowly. "Owen," he whispered. Miller's middle name was Owen. The pieces clicked together. Awful and exact. Maya's voice dropped to a whisper. "Daniel was my great-grandfather's friend, or his brother." Derek swore under his breath. "You don't know what you're talking about." But the panic in his tone said otherwise. Cole stared at him. "Daniel wasn't just the brother. He was the heir. You erased him. And when Samuel Miller, his protégé, tried to tell the truth, you destroyed him too." Derek's composure shattered. "You think you can just rewrite this? You'll ruin us." "No," Cole said. "You already did." Maya stepped back toward the exit, clutching the folder. "We're done here." Derek lunged again, but Cole caught his arm, slamming him against the cabinet. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Stay down," Cole growled. Maya's voice trembled. "Alex, we need to go." "No." He released his cousin and turned to her. "Take the papers. Get them somewhere safe." "What about you?" "He'll stall him." She hesitated only a second before running Stein behind her. She heard Derek shout. Metal crash against metal. Cole's low voice cutting through. "You can't fight truth forever." "Derek." Maya sprinted through the corridor, rainwater seeping through cracks in the concrete ceiling. Her reflection flickered on the steel panels as she passed. "In Hahen." The folder felt like it was burning. When she burst into the night, the first siren was already rising in the distance. Not police, but the building's own alarm. She didn't stop. Across the pier, lights from the city trembled on the water like 1,000 witnesses. She reached the end of the dock and bent over, chest heaving. Behind her, the warehouse door slammed open. A figure stumbled out. Cole. Soaked. His shirt streaked with dust. "Are you okay?" she gasped. He nodded, catching his breath. "Derek's gone. He'll regroup. But we have what we need." Maya held up the torn folder. The name Daniel Owen Cole visible under the broken lamplight. "This changes everything, doesn't it?" "Yes," Cole said, voice low. "And it changes nothing." She frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked out over the dark water. "The truth doesn't save anyone until someone's willing to hear it. And men like Derek own every microphone in this city. Then we'll find our own." He turned to her, rain running down his face like sweat. For the first time, he smiled without control. "You really are his blood." "Who?" she asked. He glanced back at the warehouse, then at Hare. Both of them. Lightning flashed again, splitting the sky over the pier. In its brief, brilliant light, Maya saw the torn edge of the folder glow like something alive. Whatever story they had started, it wasn't over. It had only begun to remember itself. The storm rolled inland, dragging thunder over the skyline like a chain. The city hummed with electricity, streetlights flickering, sirens echoing, the ocean pounding against the wharfs. Maya and Alexander stood beneath an overpass, soaked, breathing hard. Behind them, the old archive warehouse was nothing but a dark silhouette against the flashing sky. Maya's fingers were numb from clutching the torn folder. Inside it, the name Daniel Owen Cole bled faintly through the paper where the rain had touched it. She pressed it under her coat. Alexander ran a hand through his wet hair. We can't go back to my apartment. He'll have it watched. You mean your cousin? He nodded. He's desperate now. Desperate men don't think. They clean up. Maya stared at him. And what are we doing? Running or fighting? Both, he said. Until we can choose. They found shelter in an abandoned ferry terminal by the docks. Half the windows were broken, and the sea crept in through the cracks in the floorboards. The fluorescent lights buzzed and died as Alexander found a working lamp from a maintenance cabinet. He set it on a crate between them, its pale glow turning the room into a confession booth. Maya unwrapped the folder. Daniel Owen Cole, she said softly, as if saying the name out loud could bring him back. He was the original heir. Alexander nodded. The family records show two brothers, Ellen and Daniel. But Daniel's file disappears after 1923. My grandfather always said he tried to steal from the company, so they cut him out. And the truth. Alexander looked at the papers she'd saved. Blueprints. Contracts. A single handwritten letter folded between them. He picked it up carefully, scanning the faded ink. The letter read, To Siemi. Keep the ring. Keep the truth. I can't be both builder and guardian. One of us must survive the lie long enough to fix it. Deus, builder and guardian, Maya whispered. The engraving on the rings. Alexander's voice was almost reverent. He gave your grandfather his ring. The guardian's ring. She stared at him across the crate. Then what does that make you? He looked down at his own ring. The phoenix winking in the dim light. The builder. The one who destroyed what he built. The words hung between them, heavy as guilt. Hours later, Alexander dozed against the wall, exhaustion finally catching him. Maya couldn't sleep. She sat on the edge of a bench, watching the tide slap against the dock, and let her mind turn over everything like stones in her hand. The story wasn't just about one stolen invention. It was about a dynasty built on erasure, a stolen identity, a century of silence. She pulled her phone out and opened the encrypted drive. Every document, every photo she'd copied, was still there. Her only insurance. But one message blinked unread at the top of the screen. Unknown number. The Tribune won't help you. They've already been paid. If you want the truth heard, meet me. Tomorrow 6 m. Pia 19. No signature. But Maya's gut told her it wasn't Derek. The tone was different. Kamu. Almost regretful. She looked over at Alexander, asleep against the cold wall, and wondered if he was keeping his own secrets. At the Davn. The fog came in heavy. The ocean was all breath and distance. Maya slipped out quietly, leaving Alexander asleep, his jacket draped over his arm, the lamp still burning low. She followed the piers until she reached Pier 19. An old loading dock fenced off from the rest of the harbor. A lone figure waited near the end, coat collar up, face half-shadowed. Maya, Brooks. The woman said, You don't know me, but you know my work. Maya frowned. Who are you? The woman stepped closer, mid-50s. Sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Geneva, hey. I'm Alexander's legal counsel, or I was. Until an hour ago. Maya's pulse quickened. He sent you? No. Geneva said. He doesn't know I'm here. But I know what he's planning. And I know what Derek is planning to stop him. Maya folded her arms. Then talk fast. Geneva handed her a small flash drive. This is a mirror of the Cole Foundation's audit database. It contains every financial transaction from 1960 to 1975. Bribes. Transfers. Payouts. Including the $50,000 sent to your grandfather under a shell name. Maya stared. That's proof. It's also dangerous. Geneva said. Because if Derek learns you have it, he won't just try to silence you. He'll destroy anyone connected to the case, including Alexander. Then why give it to me? Because he's too deep inside to see the fire he's walking into. And you? Geneva's gaze softened. You still remember what the truth is supposed to feel like? Before Maya could respond, a low rumble echoed from the street above. Engines. Multiple. Geneva stiffened. They're here. Who? Derek's security team. Maya's heart kicked against her ribs. Can we run? Geneva shook her head. You can. What about you? Geneva smiled sadly. I'm already a ghost in this story. She shoved the flash drive into Maya's hand. Go. And tell Alexander to finish what his family started. Maya hesitated. Then ran. By the time she reached the ferry terminal, the sun had burned through the fog. Alexander was pacing by the windows. When he saw her, his relief flickered into anger. Where were you? I met your lawyer. Maya said. His face darkened. Geneva. She gave me this. Maya held up the flash drive. She said, it's proof. Every transaction your family buried. He exhaled. Half awe. Half dread. God. She actually did it. She also said they were coming for us. He looked past her. Out the window. And froze. Down the pier. 2 black SUVs turned onto the access road. Maya's stomach dropped. Them? He nodded grimly. Them. She stuffed the flash drive into her pocket. Clutching it like a heartbeat, Alexander turned to her. There's a way out back. The ferry tunnels. They haven't been used in years. What about you? I'll slow them down. No. Maya said fiercely. Not this time. He met her eyes. The storm reflected in both. Maya. She shook her head. You said it yourself. Builder and guardian. One can't exist without the other. The air filled with the echo of boots on concrete. They didn't have time for arguments anymore. Alexander grabbed her hand. Then we run. Together. They plunged into the dark of the old ferry tunnel. Footsteps splashing through shallow water. The sound of pursuit growing louder behind them. At the end of the tunnel, a narrow maintenance ladder led upward to a grate. Alexander climbed first. Forcing it open, cold daylight spilled through. He reached down for her hand. Breathless. Come. Maya climbed. The folder clutched to her chest. The flash drive biting into her palm. As she reached the top, a shout echoed behind them. Derek's voice. Sharp as a blade. Alex, don't do this. Alexander looked down. His expression unreadable. Too late. He slammed the grate shut behind them. They ran until the city swallowed the sound. At a safe distance, Maya finally stopped. Gasping for air. They were in an empty lot overlooking the water. The sun had risen fully now, glinting off the skyline. Alexander turned toward her. We have the evidence, but evidence isn't enough. Then what is? He looked toward the horizon where the coal tower glimmered like a monument to lies. A reckoning. Maya followed his gaze. The flash drive warm in her hand. Then let's give them one. The city below buzzed unaware. But something in the wind had changed. As if the storm had left a mark that wouldn't wash away. And far behind them, the sound of sirens began again. Not chasing, but calling. The city didn't wake up, it lurched. By noon, Harbor City's skyline was backlit by sunlight that made every building look sharper. Every secret thinner. Maya and Alexander had been moving since dawn. Slipping through the cracks of downtown, a shuttered train station. A mechanic's shop where no one asked questions. A cafe whose Wi-Fi still worked, if you sat close enough to the wall socket. The flash drive, Geneva's last gift, was the only thing between them and erasure. Maya leaned over the old laptop Alexander had scavenged from storage. The keys stuck, the fan whined. On the screen, hundreds of files scrolled past. Names, accounts, offshore payments. It was a graveyard disguised as bookkeeping. Her voice was a whisper. $50,000. October 1968. Samuel Miller. Alexander nodded. Jaw tight. The transfer that bought your grandfather's silence. Maya kept reading. And here. Consulting fee approved by WP. Transferred through Pierce & Cole Holdings WP. That's William Pierce. Your grandfather. He closed his eyes for a moment. He made it look legitimate. A single payment that buried a man's life's work. Maya scrolled further. A new column appeared. Restricted beneficiaries. The last name on the list, Daniel O. Cole Foundation. Inactive since 1974. She looked up. Your family set up a foundation in Daniel's name after erasing him. Alexander's tone turned bitter. That's how you sanitize guilt. You give it a plaque. Maybe we can use it. He frowned. How? Reinstate it. Rebuild it. You have the name. I have the proof. If the press won't touch us, we make our own spotlight. Alexander started out here. Something igniting behind his fatigue. A press conference. Something bigger. She said. A gala. Your cousin's charity gala is this Friday. Right, the one the whole city watches. He blinked. You want to crash it? Maya smiled faintly. No. I want to rewrite it. That afternoon, the first cracks of panic began appearing inside Cole Capital. Derek stood in his office, staring at 3 monitors filled with alerts. Unauthorized access attempts. Data leaks. File retrievals from the archive servers. He barked into the intercom. Who's touching the legacy servers? Unknown login from the downtown network. His assistant said, We're tracing it. Don't trace. Derek snapped. Shut it down. He turned toward the window. Below him, the city glittered. His empire of glass and illusion. You can't outsmart blood. He muda. You can only dilute it. That night, in the mechanic's shop, Maya and Alexander went over their plan. The room smelled of motor oil and rain. Tools hung on pegboards like patient weapons. Alexander laid out a printed floor plan of the Cole Foundation ballroom. The venue for the gala. Main hall here, he said, pointing. Stage access through the west corridor. Security checkpoint at the front. 2 minutes between speeches to hijack the feed. Maya watched him, noticing how his voice steadied when he had a strategy. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was the machine his family had built, finally turning itself against its makers. You've done this before, she said. Hostile takeovers. He replied dryly. Same principle. Fewer cameras. And if Derek sees us, he won't. He'll be too busy basking in the PR spotlight. She hesitated. And if we fail, he met her eyes. Then at least the truth dies louder this time. Maya nodded slowly. Loud I can do. By morning, they were ghosts again. Every cafe window reflected their faces like wanted posters. They changed phones twice. Rerouted signals. Used cash only. Alexander had pulled strings from the shadows of his own empire. Security passes. A silent partner at the Tribune who owed him too many favors. When the clock hit 10:00 a.m., an email went out to every major network in Harbor City. The subject line was simple. The Phoenix has 2 rings. Attached the ledger scans. The patent withdrawal. The offshore transfers. Anonymous source. Within hours. The city's financial feeds were buzzing. Speculation. Disbelief. Corporate spin. But no one had proof. Yet. That was coming Friday night. Thursday evening brought stillness. The kind that feels like a storm crouching behind silence. Maya stood on the hospital roof, looking out over the city lights. Ruth's latest tests had come back stable. But Maya hadn't told her any of this. Not about the flash drive. Not about the gala. Not about the danger. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. Make them angry. She didn't need to. They already were. Alexander joined her, setting 2 coffees on the ledge. For strength, he said. She smiled weakly. Or courage. Same thing, he said. They stood in silence a moment. The skyline stretched before them, the Cole Tower gleaming like a lighthouse built by liars. Maya broke the quiet. When this is over, what happens to you? I don't know. His voice was calm, almost accepting. Maybe I rebuild what's left. Maybe I don't. And me? He turned toward her. You'll finally stop running. She didn't answer. The wind carried the sound of distant traffic, the hum of the city's sleepless veins. She looked down at the phoenix ring in her palm. 2 tiny feathers had worn smooth over the years, one on each side, like the wings had learned to rest. Tomorrow, she said softly, we burn the lie down. Alexander nodded. And from the ashes, the truth rises. She finished. The next day, The city's wealthiest gathered beneath chandeliers. Clinking glasses under the banner of charity, the cameras rolled. The orchestra tuned. The facade of legacy shone one last time, but in the service corridor behind the stage, a waitress in borrowed heels and a man without a last name waited for their cue. And above them, hidden in the control booth, the phoenix waited to rise again. The ballroom of the Cole Foundation glittered like a cathedral built for vanity. Crystal chandeliers caught the light and scattered it like broken glass. Champagne flowed. Violins whispered, "Onstaja." A massive LED screen projected the foundation's slogan in white serif letters. Legacy. Honor. Vision. Maya stood in the shadows behind the velvet curtains. Wearing a borrowed catering uniform and a thin layer of calm she didn't feel, the tray in her hands was empty. The ring in her pocket wasn't beside her. Alexander adjusted the cuff of his tuxedo. He belonged here. Even if he wished he didn't. She leaned closer, whispering, "Tell me again how this doesn't end with us in handcuffs." "It might," he said evenly. "But they'll have to arrest the truth first." The orchestra struck a final chord. A voice echoed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our host for the evening, Mr. Derek Cole." The applause was immediate. Obedient. Derek stepped into the spotlight like a man greeting his reflection. Perfectly tailored tuxedo. Practiced smile. His voice carried that politician's warmth that sells lies as faith. "Tonight," he began, "we celebrate progress, innovation, and the enduring spirit of our founders. The phoenix reminds us that rebirth comes only from resilience." Maya's grip on the tray tightened. The hypocrisy in his tone made her stomach turn. Alexander's voice was low. "That's our cue. 2 minutes till the charity reel starts. And when it does, we hijack the feed." In the control booth, a young technician scrolled through a playlist of preloaded videos. Donor spotlights, foundation achievements, archival footage. She didn't notice when another hand slid a flash drive into the console port. Alexander's old ID still had admin clearance. He typed fast, bypassing the security override with muscle memory. The flash drive's folder opened Phoenix Protocol, MP4. He glanced down at the stage. Derek was still basking in applause, and whispered into his mic, "Ready." Maya's voice came through the earpiece, "Do it." The ballroom lights dimmed. The orchestra faded. The massive screen flickered once. Then, instead of the glossy charity montage, an old black and white photo appeared. 2 men beside a turbine prototype. A caption scrolled across the bottom in stark white, "For is-im." The real architect. Deus se. A murmur spread through the crowd. More images followed. Scans of patents, ledger transfers, blueprints. Each slide carried a timestamp. A signature. A lie turned inside out. The final page was unmistakable. The offshore account routing $50. "Null to," Samuel Miller. Gasps rippled through the ballroom like a slow detonation. "Derek Froze." "Cut the feed," he shouted. The technician in the booth tried. But Alexander's code had locked the system. Maya stepped forward from behind the curtain. The spotlight found her before she was ready. But she didn't flinch. "My name is Maya Brooks," she said, voice carrying through the room. "The man who built your empire was my grandfather, Samuel Miller. He created the turbine that made this family rich. You stole his work, erased his name, and buried the proof. Tonight, it's back." Derek's face turned the color of ash. Security. 2 guards moved toward her. But Alexander was faster. He stepped onto the stage, taking the mic from her hand. "Enough," he said. And his voice boomed with the authority of lineage. "You want legacy? Derek, here it is. You built this empire on theft, en coercion, en silence. That ends tonight." The screen behind him split in 2. One side showing the original Cole crest, the other displaying the family's internal memo. "Subject Calloway neutralized, asset secured." The crowd erupted. Reporters raised phones. Cameras flashed like lightning. Derek lunged for the mic. You think this makes you noble? Alex, you're destroying our name. Alexander's reply was quiet but lethal. No. I'm freeing it. Up in the booth. The lockout timer expired. Security stormed the control room. Yanking cords. Cutting power. The screen went black. But too late. Every broadcast feed had already mirrored the footage online. Maya turned to Alexander. The adrenaline shaking her voice. It's out. The whole city's seeing it. He gave a small nod. But his eyes were already searching the crowd. Derek had vanished. Where did he? The lights cut completely. Darkness swallowed the room. Then, single spot reappeared. Aimed not at the stage, but at the balcony above. Derek stood there. Microphone in hand. Flanked by 2 security guards. You think truth matters, he said. His voice amplified across the stunned silence. You think the world cares about a footnote from 50 years ago? You'll ruin thousands of jobs. Destroy families. All for what? To make yourselves feel pure, Maya shouted back. To make things right. Right, he laughed. A jagged, hollow sound. You can't rebuild an empire with guilt. You burn it down. He turned toward the crowd, spreading his arms like a preacher. My grandfather saved this city. Without him, none of you would be here. And if I have to choose between truth and survival, he looked directly at Alexander. I'll always choose survival. Then the sound, sharp, metallic, cut through the air. A gun. Screams erupted. Maya ducked instinctively as chaos flooded the ballroom. Glass shattered. Chairs toppled. People ran. Alexander pushed her down behind the podium. Eyes wide. He's lost it, he said. Security swarmed the balcony. In the chaos, the gun clattered to the floor. Derek's shout echoed once more before they tackled him. Legacy, he screamed. You'll kill it all. Minutes later, the police arrived. Reporters already filled the lawn outside, shouting questions that would define the morning's headlines. Maya sat on the stage steps, trembling. The phoenix ring still clenched in her fist. Alexander knelt beside her, his tuxedo torn, the lights of dozens of cameras painting him in alternating halos and shadows. You, okay? He asked. She nodded weakly. It's over. He shook his head. No. It's starting. He looked out across the ballroom, the place where lies had finally met their reflection, and exhaled slowly. I'll turn myself in for my family's part, he said. You take the drive and make sure it reaches the authorities. You don't have to. Yes. I do. He interrupted. The builder has to fall before the guardian can rise. Maya's throat tightened. And what if the guardian falls too? He smiled. A tired, sincere smile. Then the truth keeps flying. Outside. The first camera flashes hit them like daylight. Inside. Beneath the shattered chandeliers, 2 rings gleamed side by side on the stage. One for the builder. One for the guardian. Finally reflecting the same light. And somewhere beyond the noise, the phoenix began to rise. The dawn after the gala came gray and thin. Like the city itself was exhausted. News vans lined the street outside the Cole Foundation. Reporters with hollow eyes still narrating the fallout of a night that refused to end, their voices tangled over each other in the cold air. Shooting incident at the annual charity event. Billionaire heir, Alexander Cole detained for questioning. Corporate fraud spanning half a century. The truth had finally crawled into daylight. Bloodied, but breathing, Maya sat in a windowless interview room at the Harbor City precinct. Hands wrapped around a cup of cold coffee, the fluorescent light buzzed overhead like a nervous thought. Across from her, a detective scrolled through footage on a tablet. News clips. Witness statements. Fragments of the video she and Alexander had leaked. You're telling me, the detective said finally, that your grandfather built the original coal turbine, and they paid him to vanish? Yes. Her voice was hoarse. They called it a consulting fee. It was hush money. And this ring, he held up the evidence bag, is the proof. It's the beginning. Maya said, The rest is on that flash drive. Bank records. Ledgers. Internal memos. The detective studied her for a long moment. You realize what you did was illegal. So was everything they did. She replied quietly. I just gave the law something to work with. He didn't argue. He just nodded toward the door. You're free to go for now. Don't leave town. Maya managed a dry laugh. Trust me. I can barely afford to leave the block. Outside the station. The air smelled of burnt coffee and wet concrete. The city buzzed with headlines. Cole Dynasty implodes. Truth behind the Phoenix Ring. Bloodline of lies exposed at charity gala. Every screen downtown played the same loop of footage. Maya standing on the gala stage, defiant and shaking. Alexander beside her. Derek shouting before security dragged him away. The public didn't know yet that no one had been shot. The gun had misfired. The noise was louder than the damage. But the truth, that bullet of revelation, had already hit its target. At the hospital. Ruth Brooks was awake when Maya arrived. She had seen everything on the morning news. You did it, Ruth whispered. Her voice thin but steady. You burned the lie. Maya sank into the chair beside her bed. Exhaustion crashing over her. I almost burned with it. Her mother smiled faintly. That's how fire works. It tests what deserves to stay. For a long moment, Maya said nothing. Then she reached into her pocket and placed the ring on the bedside table next to the hospital's plastic water cup. I'm tired of symbols, she said softly. They keep telling us who we're supposed to be. Ruth looked at the ring, then at her daughter, then make it mean something new. Across town. Alexander Cole sat in a holding cell. His tuxedo traded for gray scrubs. The morning paper lay on the bench beside him. His face filled half the front page. He didn't bother reading the article. He knew what it said. Fallen higher. Corporate scandal. Family betrayal. The guard stopped by the door. You've got a visitor. He looked up, expecting a lawyer. Instead, Geneva Hay stepped in. Coat buttoned. Expression carved from steel. I told you not to go public, she said. He gave a humorless smile. And I told you it was too late to hide. Geneva Sile. Setting a folder on the table between them. The feds are building a case against Derek. Money laundering. Securities fraud. Obstruction. They're not after you. Yet. But they will be if you don't cooperate. I will. Alexander said quietly. I already did. She studied him. You sound relieved. He leaned back against the wall. For the first time in my life. I'm not lying. That evening, as the city's lights blinked awake, Maya walked through the streets alone. Every screen she passed carried the same image. Alexander being led from the courthouse. Cameras flashing like judgment. The rain began again. Soft at first, then harder. She ducked into a small diner. The kind with cracked vinyl seats and the smell of coffee that had been brewing since yesterday. The waitress looked up. You want a menu? Maya shook her head. Just black coffee. As she waited, she pulled the flash drive from her pocket. She didn't need it anymore. The evidence was already in government hands, but she couldn't let it go yet. It wasn't just proof. It was her inheritance. In a way, on the TV above the counter, the anchor's voice cut through the hum. Alexander Cole expected to testify against family members in federal court next week. Sources say he's negotiating terms to restructure the company into a public trust. Maya looked up, a strange mix of pride and grief tightening her chest. The waitress slid her coffee across the counter. You look like someone who just watched the world end. Maya smiled faintly. Maybe it's just starting over. A week later, the headlines shifted tone. Cole Capital to rebuild under new foundation. Daniel Owen Cole Trust announced for inventors and innovators. Maya Brooks named co-director of Reform Initiative. The photo beneath the headline showed her and Alexander standing side by side on the courthouse steps. Two silhouettes against the marble facade. The city's noise roaring behind them. The press called it redemption. She called it work, because the fire might have burned the lie. But the ashes still had to be cleared. Late one evening, Maya returned to the hospital with a signed document folder in her hands. Ruth was awake. her breathing easier now. What's that? Ruth asked. Might. The official charter for the foundation. It's named after Daniel and Granddad. It funds engineers. Artists. Anyone who's been silenced by the system. Her mother's eyes glistened. And who's running it? Maya hesitated. Alexander and I. Together. Ruth nodded slowly. You trust him? I don't know. Maya admitted. But he's the only one who still believes in fixing what's broken. Outside. The city pulsed under the weight of its new story. The coal tower still stood. But now its lobby plaque bore a new inscription, the Daniel Owen Cole Foundation. Builder and Guardian. Reunited. And under it, smaller. Engraved in gold, truth is the only inheritance worth keeping. Maya stood in the doorway for a long time. The reflection of the phoenix emblem dancing across the marble floor, she reached into her pocket, touched the ring one last time, and whispered, Rest now. Then she turned and walked into the light, not looking back. 3 weeks after the gala, Harbor City was still vibrating with the aftershocks. The financial pages called it the Phoenix Reckoning. But for Maya, the noise had dulled into something quieter. Like the echo of thunder after the storm has already moved on. The Daniel Owen Cole Foundation was officially open. The press loved the symbolism, the heiress of the wronged family joining forces with the heir of the guilty one. What they didn't see were the sleepless nights, the arguments behind locked doors, the ghosts that refused to sign their names and vanish. The foundation's offices were housed in the old coal tower. Same glass walls, same skyline view. But everything inside had been stripped and remade. The marble floor no longer bore the coal crest. Instead, the inlaid bronze wings stretched across the lobby, the builder and the guardian. Maya stood before it now, coffee in hand, watching her reflection ripple in the polished metal. Behind her, Alexander's voice carried from his new corner office. We're not naming it after us, he said sharply into the phone. It's not the Cole Brooks Initiative, it's the foundation. That's the point. He hung up before whoever was on the other end could argue. When he saw Maya watching, his expression softened slightly. They want branding, he said. Names. Faces. Marketable redemption arcs. I told them to go to hell. She smiled faintly. You're learning. I'm trying. But his eyes were still tired. The kind of tired that doesn't come from work, but from carrying history. Later that day, Geneva Hay arrived unannounced. She was still immaculate, her gray hair tied back, her tone clipped as ever. Congratulations, she said, dropping a fall on Alexander's disc. You're officially the face of corporate repentance. And M's. Brooks. The heart of it. Maya arched a brow. That's supposed to be a compliment. It's supposed to be a warning. Geneva opened the folder. The board isn't happy. Half of them think this foundation is a vanity project. The other half think it's a liability. Alexander leaned back in his chair. And what do you think? I think, Geneva said, that people with power don't forgive easily. You burned the old order. But the ashes still vote. She slid a single document toward them. A subpoena. Derek's defense team is preparing to drag the foundation into court. They'll claim you fabricated the evidence. Maya felt her stomach twist. They can't. Everything's been verified. Geneva's look was grave. Facts aren't enough when the world's addicted to myth. You'll need proof with witnesses. And the only one who can fully corroborate your story, your mother, hasn't spoken publicly. Maya's throat tightened. She's still recovering. I won't make her relive that. Geneva nodded once, almost sympathetic. Then prepare for the other side to speak for her. When she left, silence filled the office like fog. That night, Maya sat at the hospital again. Ruth was stronger now. Her hair thinner but her spirit sharper than ever. They want you to testify, Maya said softly. Ruth didn't flinch. I wondered when that would come. You don't have to. I do. Ruth's voice was steady. It's my story too. She reached for her daughter's hand. For years, I told myself silence was protection, that speaking would only bring trouble. But silence isn't safety. It's surrender. Maya felt her eyes sting. Mom, you've done enough. You don't owe them anything. Ruth smiled. Weary but proud. Maybe not them. But I owe him. Your grandfather. He built something honest. And they buried it. It's time someone unburied him too. When Maya left the hospital, the city felt different. Too calm. Like an animal holding its breath. She walked until she reached the waterfront. The wind carried the faint sound of construction. Workers rebuilding part of the old archive pier. The place where she and Alexander had first uncovered the truth. Now it was being turned into a museum. The Legacy of Innovation exhibit. Funded by the new foundation. As she stood watching, Alexander joined her. Hands in his pockets. She agreed. Didn't she? He asked quietly. Maya nodded. She'll testify. He exhaled. Looking toward the pier. It'll get ugly. It already is. They stood there for a long moment. The waves slapping against the pilings. The air heavy with salt and memory. Then Alexander said something she didn't expect. My father called me this morning. From Zurich. Maya turned to him. And he wants to meet. Says he has records. Private ones. From Daniel's estate. Letters. Contracts. Maybe even original blueprints. He claims he's ready to make amends. Her eyes narrowed. You believe him? I don't know. Alexander admitted. But if those records are real, they could end this for good. Maya looked back toward the water. Her reflection fractured by ripples, or start something worse. That night, she dreamt of fire again. Not the violent kind, but slow, creeping flame that eats paper before it burns wood. In the dream, the two rings melted together, the sapphire at the center glowing like an eye. When she woke, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching, something waiting. The next morning, a news alert hit her phone before sunrise. Breaking: Derek Cole granted conditional release. He plans to address the press tomorrow. Maya's stomach sank. The story wasn't over. It was evolving. She looked out the window at the city skyline. Somewhere beneath the noise and neon, the truth they had fought for was still fragile, still bleeding. And she knew, with a certainty that chilled her, that the phoenix might rise again. But every rebirth comes with another fire. Morning broke in bruised shades of gold and gray. The city didn't wake so much as shudder. The streets hummed with tension, and every news feed in Harbor City pulsed with one name: Derek Cole. Maya stood in front of the glass wall of the foundation's office, watching the screens flicker in unison. Derek's face filled every channel. Camel. Measured. Rehearsed. I was betrayed by my own blood, he said to the cameras. Lies were planted to destroy my family's legacy. The so-called evidence manufactured. The so-called hero. He paused just long enough for the reporters to lean forward. A waitress with a grudge and a billionaire desperate for absolution. Maya turned the volume off before she threw something. The silence that followed was worse than the words behind her. Alexander stood motionless. His reflection fractured across the window pane. He didn't look at the screen. He didn't have to. He's trying to flip the narrative, he said flatly. He's doing more than that, Maya replied. He's rewriting history in real time. Alexander finally turned toward her. Then we don't let him finish the sentence. 2 hours later, they were in a dim cafe across town. The kind of place reporters used as neutral ground. The smell of burnt espresso and stale adrenaline filled the air. Across the table sat Naomi Yates, investigative journalist for the Harbor Ledger. She had the kind of eyes that missed nothing and forgave even less. You want me to run an expose while he's out on bail? She asked. Voice low but razor sharp. That's a legal landmine. We have documents, Maya said, sliding over a USB drive. And witnesses. Documents the court already has. Naomi's gaze flicked to Alexander. You're asking for trial by media. I'm asking for balance, he replied. Derek's painting her as a fraud, and me as an accomplice. The truth doesn't survive silence. Naomi studied him for a moment. You're different from the man I interviewed last year. Alexander's jaw tightened. That man didn't know what his family had done. Naomi pocketed the drive. I'll review it, but I'll need one thing. Someone to go on record. Maya hesitated. You mean my mother? She's the only one who can humanize the story. Maya's pulstura? She's still recovering. Naomi gave a sympathetic nod, then make sure she's ready, because Derek's holding a press conference tomorrow. And if he cries on cue, half the city will forgive him before lunch. That evening, Maya sat at the hospital again. The rhythmic beep of machines grounding her against the chaos outside. Ruth was sitting up, reading one of her old poetry books. The light through the window turned her gray hair silver. Mum. Maya began carefully. The media's asking for someone to tell your side. Ruth looked up. Eyes clear and steady. Then they'll get it. You don't have to. I want to. Ruth's voice was firm. For him. For your grandfather. For every man or woman who's been told their silence is the price of survival. Maya felt something inside her shift. Pride. Fear. Love. All tangled together. He'll try to destroy you. Ruth smiled faintly. He can't. He already tried. The next morning, Derek's press conference filled the plaza outside the courthouse. Cameras. Reporters. Onlookers. Every lens hungry for redemption or blood. Derek stepped up to the podium, impeccably calm. I have always believed in truth, he said. The irony unflinching, but truth can be twisted by ambition. My cousin and Ems, Brooks have waged a war not for justice, but for attention. Maya watched from across the street. Hood up. Sunglasses hiding her eyes. She could feel the crowd shifting. Whispers. Doubts. Sympathy creeping back toward the man who'd orchestrated everything. Then, at precisely 1130 a.m., another microphone crackled to life. Excuse me. The crowd turned. Ruth Brooks was being wheeled through the crowd, her hospital gown hidden beneath a plain coat. Geneva Hay guided the wheelchair with military precision. The reporters surged forward like a tide. Derek froze mid-sentence. Ruth's voice, though soft, carried through the speakers with startling clarity. My name is Ruth Brooks. My father was Samuel Miller. I am here to tell you he was not a thief. He was an honest man. An engineer who built something extraordinary, and when your family stole it, they stole his life. Gasps rippled through the audience. Derek's mask of control fractured, the faintest twitch betraying his panic. Ruth continued. You can hide records. You can buy silence. But the truth? She looked directly into the cameras. The truth waits. And when it wakes, it remembers every name. The plaza erupted in flashes. Reporters shouted questions. Derek's handless mood in trying to cut the feed. But Geneva had already rerouted it through multiple livestream channels. The broadcast was unstoppable. Alexander stepped forward then, calm but unyielding. My family's empire was built on lies. Tonight, it begins again. Not under our name, but under his, Samuel Miller's, Daniel Owen Cole's. The men who built and guarded something better than power integrity. Maya watched from the edge of the crowd, tears burning behind her eyes. Her mother was trembling, but there was light in her face. A peace she hadn't seen in years. That evening, as the news looped the footage across every channel, Maya sat beside Ruth's hospital bed. The city outside was quiet for once. They can't twist it anymore, Ruth whispered. We said it first. Maya took her hand. You did. Ruth smiled faintly. You know what your grandfather used to say. The truth is patient. It doesn't die when buried. It germinates. Maya brushed a tear from her cheek. And now it's blooming. Outside, fireworks from a nearby festival scattered color across the night sky. One burst flared gold and blue, the colors of the phoenix rings. Maya looked up, her reflection shimmering in the window, and whispered, For the builder and the guardian. Ruth squeezed her hand gently. And for the ones who came after, but miles away. In a quiet office overlooking the dark harbor, Derek Cole watched the same footage on a muted screen. He poured himself a drink, hand trembling only slightly. The headlines glowed across the ticker at the bottom. Ruth Brooks testifies. Public opinion turns. Investigation reopened. His gaze drifted to the corner of his desk, where a small, velvet-lined box sat half open. Inside, glinting faintly under the lamp, was a third ring. The same phoenix emblem, but darker gold. Its sapphire missing. Derek's mouth twisted into a faint smile. Builder, he murmured. Guardian. He turned the ring in his fingers. But who remembers the air? He closed the box. The click sharp in the still air. The truth had risen. Yes, but so had something else. The next morning, Harbor City woke to a strange calm. No sightings. No breaking news. Just a city holding its breath after weeks of chaos. But beneath the stillness, something was moving. In the Cole Tower boardroom, Alexander stood at the long glass table with a dozen foundation directors, all pretending not to be nervous. The view behind them, steel and skyline, looked the same as it always had. But everything it represented had changed, or so he thought. Phase 2 of the foundation rollout, Alexander said, tapping the screen. Scholarships, engineering grants, and public archives to document the truth. Full transparency. The directors nodded in the careful, non-committal way of people calculating which side of history might still profit them. Then a secretary hurried in, whispering something to Alexander. Her face was pale. He frowned. What do you mean the files were altered? The Samuel Miller archive, she said. The scanned blueprints and patent records. They've been tampered with. The digital signatures don't match the originals. Alexander felt the room tilt slightly. That's impossible. Those were verified through 3 separate audits. They're gone from the public drive, she said. All we have now are copies. He exchanged a quick look with Maya, who had just entered the room behind him. Her expression turned sharp. When did this happen? Early this morning, the secretary said. Whoever did it covered their trail. But the system shows the access came from an old internal account. Cole Corp. Admin Tray. Alexander froze. He hadn't heard that name in years. Admin 03, he murmured. That's my father's private key. Later, in the elevator, Maya crossed her arms. You said your father was in Zurich. He was, Alexander said, staring at the descending floor numbers like they might offer absolution. But if he still has that clearance, then he's not finished. He's continuing Derek's work from a distance. Or worse, rewriting the narrative again. Maya's voice was tight. Rewriting the truth. He nodded slowly. My father taught me one thing: if you can't erase history, you drown it in doubt. Maya's phone buzzed then. A message from an unknown number. He's not in Zurich. Dokchu. Tonight. Bring the ring. Her stomach dropped. She showed it to Alexander. He read it once. Then again. He wants to meet, and he knows you have the ring. Maya swallowed hard. Dovego. He didn't answer right away. The elevator doors slid open onto the lobby. Outside, the rain had started again. Soft but persistent. Like memory. Yes, he said finally. Because whatever he's planning, it's already in motion. By nightfall, the harbor was a field of fog and sodium light. Cargo cranes rose like iron skeletons against the sky. Dock 7 was deserted except for one figure standing beneath a lamppost. Hands clasped behind his back. Jonathan Cole, Alexander's father, was the kind of man who looked born in a suit, his hair silvered, his posture perfect, his presence both magnetic and unnerving. Maya Brooks, he said, turning toward her with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. You look remarkably like your grandfather's photographs. Maya stayed close to Alexander. You sent the message. I did. I thought it was time we met. You've been tampering with our records, Alexander said coldly. Erasing evidence. Jonathan's smile widened slightly. Not erasing. Curating. The public loves a story. But they hate complexity, so I'm editing it for them. He took a step closer. Your mother's testimony was moving. M's. Brooks. Almost too perfect. The kind of story that sells empathy. But history, he said, tapping his temple, isn't built on emotion. It's built on control. Maya glared. You mean power? Same thing. Jonathan said softly. Your mother wanted justice. You want truth. My sons wanted redemption. And me, I want survival. Because whoever controls the past controls what's worth saving. Alexander's jaw clenched. You can't bury it again. We've made sure of that. Jonathan chuckled. Ah. Yes. The foundation. The phoenix rising from the ashes. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small box. The same kind Maya had seen in Derek's office. He opened it. Inside was the third ring. Daga gold? Its sapphire socket empty. Do you know why there were 3 rings? He asked quietly. Maya blinked. 3. Yes. Jonathan said. 1 for the builder, 1 for the guardian, and 1 for the heir. The one meant to choose between them. He held it out. The lamplight glinting across its worn surface. This ring was never finished. Mujang. No eye. Because the heir sees nothing until he decides which truth to serve. Alexander started at it. You kept this hidden, protected. Jonathan corrected. The day Daniel Owen Cole disappeared. He didn't die. He left. And before he did, he gave me this. Said it would matter when the others destroyed themselves. Maya's voice was barely above a whisper. You're saying Daniel lived? Jonathan smiled faintly. For a time. Long enough to build a second life, a quiet one. He died under another name. Daniel Owen Miller. The world seemed to tilt. Maya felt her breath catch. My grandfather, she said. You mean? Jonathan nodded. He wasn't just your grandfather's friend. He was him. Daniel Cole became Samuel Miller. The words cracked something open inside her. That's impossible. Is it? Jonathan said. He changed everything. His name. His designs. His story. So that when my father's empire rose, there would still be a conscience buried beneath it. The guardian and the builder weren't 2 men after all. Maya stared at him. The sound of the sea roaring in her ears. Then what are we? Jonathan looked at her. Then at his son, descendants of the same man's 2 halves. Alexander stepped forward. Voice cold. You knew this. And you let the families destroy each other. I let the truth ripen. Jonathan said, people don't value what's handed to them. They value what they bleed for. You bled. Both of you. Now the truth is alive again. And the Cole name. Our name. Will endure through it. No? Maya said, shaking her head. It'll survive despite it. Jonathan smiled, tucking the box back into his coat. Perhaps. But remember this. Stories outlive people. And right now, the story belongs to whoever finishes it first. He stepped past them, his polished shoes echoing on the wet dock, and disappeared into the fog. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain grew harder, beating against the concrete like a heartbeat. Maya finally whispered, if what he said is true, then our families, we're the same bloodline. Alexander nodded slowly. Builder and guardian. Same origin, heir and echo. She looked at him. The weight of it pressing down like centuries. What do we do with that? He met her eyes. And for once, there was no hesitation. We decide what kind of heirs we want to be. The waves crashed against the pier. And somewhere in the distance, lightning flashed again. White. Fierce. And unflinching. For the first time since the diner, Maya didn't flinch. She looked down at the 2 rings she held. The phoenix twin flames. And then toward the storm. Maybe the 3rd ring wasn't unfinished. Maybe it was waiting. The storm broke fully by dawn. Rain hammered the city until the streets gleamed like sheets of glass, reflecting everything upside down. Truths and lies trading places in the puddles. Maya hadn't slept. She sat in her small apartment, wrapped in a blanket. The 2 rings laid out before her on the coffee table. The builder's ring. Gold and fierce. The guardian's ring. Gentler but no less defiant. And between them, a folded scrap of paper she couldn't stop rereading. Daniel Owen Miller. Formerly Daniel O. Cole. Death certificate. 1972. It was official. Jonathan hadn't been bluffing. Her grandfather. The man she'd built her identity around. hadn't just been a victim of the Cole family. He was the Cole family. And that truth, so strange, so heavy, felt like both betrayal and salvation. When the knock came, she didn't even startle. "Doors open," she said quietly. Alexander stepped in, soaked to the bone, hair slicked back by rain. His eyes were darker than usual, as if he hadn't slept either. "You saw the report?" he asked. She nodded. "I can't stop thinking about it." He sat across from her, staring at the rings. "If it's true, then our families were never enemies, just splintered, like one story told two ways," she murmured. He gave a humorless smile. "Exactly. And my father intends to sell whichever version turns the highest profit." Maya looked up sharply. "You think he's going public?" "I know he is." He pulled a tablet from his coat pocket and placed it on the table. The screen showed a press release scheduled for the following morning. Cole Corporate Holdings announces The Phoenix Legacy, a new docuseries exploring family reconciliation and industrial innovation. Maya felt sick. He's commercializing it. He's rewriting it again, Alexander said grimly. If that airs, he controls the narrative. The theft becomes a partnership. Daniel becomes a noble deserter. And my grandfather dies a misunderstood visionary. And your father becomes the savior, she said bitterly. He nodded. Exactly. They sat in silence, the rain tapping the window like an impatient clock. Maya finally spoke. "So how do we stop him?" 2 hours later, they were back at the foundation office. Geneva Hay was waiting for them, arms folded, expression unreadable. "I assume you've both seen Jonathan's announcement," she said without preamble. Alexander nodded. "We're not letting it happen." "Good," Geneva said. "Because it's worse than a docuseries. He's planning to use the third ring, the one Derek found, as the symbol of his brand relaunch. He's calling it the Heir's Ring." Maya's stomach clenched. "He still has it." Geneva nodded grimly. "He kept it after Derek's arrest. The stone's missing. But rumor is, he's commissioning a new sapphire. He wants to complete the legacy." Alexander muttered a curse under his breath. "He's finishing Daniel's design and making it a monument to himself." Geneva leaned in. "And here's the part you'll hate. He's holding a private unveiling tomorrow night. Invite only. Investors, press, and a few politicians who owe him favors. Maya excited. A gala. Again. History loves repetition." Geneva said dryly. "The question is, do you?" Alexander looked at Maya. "We end it there." That night, they planned. Blueprints of the Cole estate spread across the table. Entrance. Security layouts. Power grids. Geneva traced lines with a pen. "He'll display the ring in the library. Same room Daniel worked in a century ago. Cameras everywhere. Of course, but if you access the presentation feed, I can replace it," Maya said. "Show the real blueprints. The original patents Daniel filed under his false name." Alexander nodded. "And I'll confront him live. Force him to acknowledge the truth before he can bury it again." Geneva gave a dry smile. "You two do realize this sounds like a sequel to your last fiasco. Then let's make it the finale," Maya said quietly. The following evening, the Cole estate glowed like a palace from another century. Journalists buzzed on the marble steps, cameras flashing as limousines arrived. Inside, the atmosphere shimmered with wealth and arrogance. Waiters moved like clockwork. String music floated through the air. And in the center of the room, encased in glass and light, rested the unfinished ring. Maya, dressed in black, slipped through the crowd unnoticed. Alexander was already on the stage, mingling with the investors like a ghost among the living. Then Jonathan appeared. He was radiant in silver gray, every inch the patriarch reborn. When he took the microphone, the room stilled. "Tonight," he began smoothly, "we celebrate rebirth. Not from scandal, but from understanding. The Cole family has always stood for creation, innovation, legacy. And in honor of that legacy, we complete what began a century ago." He gestured toward the glass case. The final ring. The symbol of our unity. Past, present, and future. The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the case. Inside, the third ring gleamed, now complete. A sapphire burning at its center like a captured flame. Maya froze. He already restored it. She whispered into her mic. Alexander's voice came back. Tense. Then we change what it stands for. She pressed a button on her wrist device. The screen behind Jonathan flickered. For a moment, the gala guests saw a golden phoenix logo. His logo. Then the image glitched. Blueprints filled the screen instead. Handwritten diagrams. Signatures. And finally, Daniel's note, one for the builder, one for the guardian, one for the heir. Should he remember who he serves? Gasps spread through the hall. Jonathan turned sharply. Who did that? Alexander stepped forward from the crowd. I did. The audience fell silent. You talk about legacy, Alexander said, voice steady. But legacy isn't what we take. It's what we repair. Daniel Cole. Samuel Miller wasn't a deserter. He was the conscience this family buried. You've been living off his silence long enough. Jonathan's mask cracked. You're destroying everything I built. No, Alexander said. I'm rebuilding what he built. The lights flared again as security began to move. But the damage was done. The screen still played Daniel's name, his designs, his handwriting. And then, from the back of the hall, another voice rang out. Familiar, fragile, but strong. Ruth Brooks, standing in her wheelchair, flanked by Geneva and a reporter's camera crew, her voice carried across the marble. My father was Daniel Owen Cole. He lived. He loved. And he left behind the truth you tried to bury. Tonight, we claim it back. The room erupted. Flashes. Shouts. House. Jonathan's face drained of color. The ring's glass case cracked under the surge of bodies pushing forward, and in that blur of confusion, Maya saw one image burn into her memory. Jonathan, standing before the shattered case, the ring in his hand. His eyes filled with something between rage and regret. Then, he let it go. The ring fell, striking the marble floor. The sapphire split cleanly in two. The room gasped. Jonathan whispered, almost reverently. The heir has chosen. Then he turned, walked through the sea of stunned faces, and vanished into the storm outside. Hours later, after the estate emptied and the rain swallowed the roads, Maya and Alexander stood alone in the wrecked library. The broken sapphire lay between them, each half glinting faintly in the dim light. What do we do with it? She asked softly. Alexander looked at her, then at the ring fragments. We make something new. Maya nodded. No more heirs. No more builders. No more guardians. He smiled. A weary, real smile. Just partners. Outside. Lightning struck the harbor, and the city's reflection flickered like a mirror trying to remember its true face. The next morning, Harbor City opened its eyes to a new scandal, the Cole Gala collapse. As the press had branded it, dominated every feed footage of the shattered sapphire, the confrontation, the walkout. Headlines screamed words like legacy in flames. Heir denounces patriarch. And truth or treason. Domost. It was spectacle. To Maya and Alexander, it was aftermath. The foundation office felt like a war bunker. The air smelled of burnt coffee and exhaustion. Piles of documents and flash drives littered the conference table. Geneva stood before a wall of live feeds. News. Social media. And financial tickers, all bleeding chaos. Public reaction is split, she said. Eyes flicking between screens. Half think Jonathan's a martyr. Half think he's the devil. Investors are panicking. Cole Holdings lost 8% overnight. Alexander didn't look up from his laptop. And the foundation, Geneva's tone softened slightly. Donations are pouring in. Ordinary people are calling it the reckoning. Maya sat opposite him, rubbing her temples. It doesn't feel like a reckoning. It feels like a storm we survived by accident. Geneva's gaze darted to her. You survived because you had the truth. Don't underestimate that. Maya exhaled slowly. Truth doesn't rebuild companies. Geneva? Or people? Maybe not, Geneva said. But it starts the blueprint. By noon, the mayor's office called. An emergency meeting. They wanted both Maya and Alexander to testify before a civic ethics committee regarding corporate interference in historical documentation. It was phrased politely, but everyone knew what it meant. Damage control. As they walked toward City Hall, Maya's reflection followed her in the rain-streaked glass of every skyscraper. For the first time, she saw not the waitress from the diner, not the desperate daughter fighting hospital bills, but the woman standing toe-to-toe with an empire. Still, part of her trembled. "Do you ever think we made it worse?" she asked quietly. Alexander glanced sideways. "You mean, by telling the truth, by waking it up?" She gave a small, bitter laugh. "The truth doesn't just free people, Alex. Sometimes it burns them." He didn't answer right away. "Maybe," he said finally. "But maybe fire's not always destruction. Sometimes it's just light." Inside City Hall, the hearing room was packed. Reporters, officials, cameras. The low murmur of an audience, ready for blood. Jonathan Cole wasn't there, but his shadow was the committee chair. A severe woman named Margaret Lyle began the questioning with clinical precision. "Ems. Brooks," she said. "Is it true your grandfather concealed his identity as Daniel Owen Cole to avoid prosecution for intellectual theft?" Maya's breath caught. "He concealed it because speaking it meant risking his family's life. And you, Mr. Cole." Lyle turned her gaze on Alexander. "Publicly denounced your father last night. Do you stand by that statement?" "I do," Alexander said, voice calm. "Because integrity doesn't inherit bloodlines. It builds them." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lyle leaned back. "And yet, your foundation is now the largest beneficiary of the same fortune you've condemned. How do you reconcile that?" Maya and Alexander exchanged a glance. He answered first. "By transforming it. Every dollar we keep goes toward innovation that can't be stolen. Voices that can't be silenced." Lyle's expression didn't change, but her pen paused. "And if the Cole name becomes a relic of disgrace," Alexander looked at Maya, then back to the panel, "then we'll bury it properly this time." The hearing adjourned to thunderous chatter. Cameras flashed as they exited the chamber, but neither of them spoke until they reached the marble steps outside. Maya finally asked, "Do you think that convinced them?" "Probably not," he said. "But maybe it convinced us." She gave a small smile. "That's something." As they descended the steps, a familiar voice stopped them. "I wouldn't be so sure." They turned. Jonathan stood at the bottom of the staircase, his suit immaculate despite the drizzle, his face calm. Too calm. "You've both done impressive work," he said smoothly. "Public opinion is volatile, but you've managed to weaponize it brilliantly. You've turned guilt into currency." "Alexander stiffened. You shouldn't be here. I came to give you something." He reached into his coat and produced an envelope, sealed with red wax. "Inside," he said, "are letters. Daniel's letters. To my father. To me. You might find them illuminating." Maya frowned. "Why now?" "Because you've inherited his fire." Jonathan said, "But you still don't understand its cost." He pressed the envelope into Alexander's hand and turned to go. "When you read them, you'll see. Truth doesn't make you free. It makes you responsible." And then, like a ghost, he vanished into the fog-laced traffic. That night, they opened the letters together in Alexander's penthouse. The first was written in Daniel's looping script, dated June 1969. "To whoever finds this, if my name is still a weapon, use it wisely. I did not flee my family. I fled their blindness. The rings were not meant to divide us. They were a map. Each ring marks a choice. Builder. Guardian. Heir. Creation. Preservation. Judgment. The balance fails when one believes they are the whole." Maya read the words twice. A map, she whispered. Not a symbol. Alexander's fingers traced the ink. There's more. If the heir forgets his role, the phoenix falls. But if the builder and guardian unite, the fire renews. That is the last promise I made before I disappeared. He looked up at her. Realization dawning. He wasn't talking about bloodlines. He was talking about us. The foundation, she murmured. The next generation. He smiled faintly. Then maybe we finally finish what he started. Outside. The storm eased. Clouds broke apart. And the moonlight spilled over the harbor. Maya walked to the window, gazing down at the reflection of the city below. Half shadow, half flame. Do you ever think he knew it would come to this? She asked quietly. Alexander joined her, standing close enough for their reflections to merge in the glass. I think he hoped it would, he said, that someday, someone would finally choose both builder and guardian. She whispered. He nodded. Together, the city lights shimmered in the dark water, flickering like embers that refused to die. The city was quieter, now, not healed, not whole, just quieter, like a body learning how to breathe after a long wound. 3 months had passed since the night of the gala. The news cycle had moved on, as it always did. But the echo of the coal scandal still rippled through Harbor City. The foundation's name had changed again. No longer the Daniel Owen Coal Foundation, but simply the Phoenix Trust. It didn't carry a surname anymore. That was deliberate. Maya walked through the glass atrium of the new headquarters, sunlight spilling across polished concrete. There were no portraits on the walls, no corporate logos, only a single mural, a golden bird rising from the blueprint of an engine, its wings etched with lines of poetry, her mother's poetry. At the base of the mural, a plaque read, "Built not on blood, but on truth." The building buzzed with quiet activity. Engineers, inventors, and young entrepreneurs, people who once would have been overlooked, filled the workspaces. It was messy and alive. Geneva passed her in the hallway. Tabloid in hen. The city finally approved the scholarship program, she said, and the archive digitization. Your grandfather's work will be public within the week. Maya smiled faintly. Good. It's time it belonged to everyone. Geneva paused. You know, when I first met you, I thought you were reckless. No? She smirked. You're still reckless. Just write about it. Maya laughed softly. I'll take that as progress. Later. She found Alexander on the rooftop garden, standing by the glass railing, the wind teasing his hair. He still wore no tie, no armor of status. Just a man stripped down to something human. They offered me a seat on the city's ethics board, he said when she joined him. Wants me to help draft new corporate transparency laws. She arched a brow. You're going to make the rich tell the truth. That's ambitious. He smiled. I learned from the best. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the harbor below. Cargo ships came and went. Cranes lifted new steel. The world moved on. Sometimes, Maya said quietly, I still dream about that night at the diner, the ring on your hand, the way everything changed in a single sentence. He glanced at her. And now, she said, I think it was less about finding the truth and more about what we do with it once it's found. Alexander nodded. That's what Daniel meant. The rings weren't inheritance. They were instruction. She looked at him, really looked, and in his eyes saw not the billionaire she'd once accused, but the man who had chosen to rebuild from the ashes. Downstairs, a courier arrived with a small package. Geneva brought it up to the roof, eyebrows raised. This was delivered for you. No return address. Maya took it carefully. Inside was a velvet box, worn with age. Not Jonathan's. Smaller, simpler. She opened it. Inside lay the third ring. Repaired. The sapphire rejoined. Its surface faintly cracked but still brilliant. A note rested beneath it, written in Jonathan's precise, looping hand. For the heir who chose truth over blood, the phoenix lives only when broken things are made whole. J. C. Maya's throat tightened. For all his sins, Jonathan had understood the final act. She turned the ring over. Inside, new words had been engraved beneath the old inscription. Builder. Guardian. One flame. Alexander looked at her. He finished it for us. No, she said softly, slipping the ring into his palm. We'll finish it together. Weeks later, in the public ceremony that marked the official launch of the Phoenix Trust's first innovation center, Maya stood on stage beside her mother and Alexander. The crowd was full of faces. Students, inventors, families, reporters, skeptics. She took a breath and spoke into the microphone. Accenture ago. This city was built on ambition. It rose fast. But it forgot something important. Its soul. Tonight, we begin again, not as heirs to power, but as keepers of purpose. She reached for Alexander's hand. The phoenix doesn't rise because of its fire. It rises because something inside it refuses to die. The audience was silent for a moment, then erupted in applause. Somewhere in the back of the hall, a camera light flickered red, recording history. This time, honestly, later that night, long after the speeches and the lights faded, Maya and Alexander walked alone along the pier where it all began. The water shimmered with city light, endless and restless. Maya turned the newly forged ring between her fingers. Do you think we did it right? Alexander smiled faintly. I think we did it real. She slipped the ring into his hand again. Then let's make sure it never belongs to just one of us. He hesitated, then tossed it into the harbor. The ring arced through the air, caught a beam of moonlight, and vanished beneath the water with a soft, final sound. They stood there in silence, watching the ripples fade until all that remained was reflection. The city. The light. The two of them. Maya reached for his hand. No more legacies, she said. He nodded. Just beginnings. The wind carried the faint scent of salt and rain. Somewhere in the distance, a gull cried, and the first sliver of dawn broke over the skyline. The city's reflection shimmered, and for a heartbeat, the surface of the water looked like fire. A year later, a small girl on a school field trip stood before the mural in the Phoenix Trust lobby. She tugged her teacher's sleeve. Who's that bird supposed to be? She asked. Her teacher smiled. It's not just one person. It's everyone who believed the truth was worth fighting for. The girl nodded solemnly, then pressed her hand against the wall, tracing the painted wings outside. The city thrummed with new life. Tonight, we begin again, not as heirs to power, but as keepers of purpose. She reached for Alexander's hand. The phoenix doesn't rise because of its fire. It rises because something inside it refuses to die. The audience was silent for a moment, then erupted in applause. Somewhere in the back of the hall, a camera light flickered red, recording history. This time, honestly, later that night, long after the speeches and the lights faded, Maya and Alexander walked alone along the pier where it all began. The water shimmered with city light, endless and restless. Maya turned the newly forged ring between her fingers. Do you think we did it right? Alexander smiled faintly. I think we did it real. She slipped the ring into his hand again. Then let's make sure it never belongs to just one of us. He hesitated, then tossed it into the harbor. The ring arced through the air, caught a beam of moonlight, and vanished beneath the water with a soft, final sound. They stood there in silence, watching the ripples fade until all that remained was reflection. The city. The light. The two of them. Maya reached for his hand. No more legacies, she said. He nodded. Just beginnings. The wind carried the faint scent of salt and rain. Somewhere in the distance, a gull cried, and the first sliver of dawn broke over the skyline. The city's reflection shimmered, and for a heartbeat, the surface of the water looked like fire. A year later, and a small girl on a school field trip stood before the mural in the Phoenix Trust lobby. She tugged her teacher's sleeve. Who's that bird supposed to be? She asked. Her teacher smiled. It's not just one person. It's everyone who believed the truth was worth fighting for. The girl nodded solemnly, then pressed her hand against the wall, tracing the painted wings outside. The city